Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airwaves of ESPN Radio and ESPN News, 250-plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM listing nearest you, plus ESPN Radio and Sirius XM Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up, as always, is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Cars, homes, boats, motorcycles, RVs, and more at Progressive.com. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Whole bunch of stuff to get into today. Whole bunch of opinions circulating around the National Football League, circulating about Jalen Ramsey demanding a trade out of Jacksonville. Whether or not that's going to happen, what's the best landing spot for him? Obviously, Cam Newton, his health, huge question mark. The bevy of quarterback injuries that have been taking place in New Orleans, in Indy, in Pittsburgh, in New York, etc. And the fact that Colin Kaepernick, whether or not he has not been called, whether or not he should be called, and what do you think it would take, if anything at all, for him to receive a call, and whether or not he deserves a call. You got a lot of people out there that don't even think he deserves a tryout. And obviously, there's millions of people who think otherwise. So that's something that we certainly don't have to hesitate to get into as the show progresses today. But the first order of business to get into is Eli Manning. Eli Manning, the quarterback for the New York Giants, the starting quarterback for the New York Giants until yesterday, when it was announced that the number 6 overall pick in the last spring's NFL draft, Mr. Daniel Jones out of Duke, will be starting for the New York Giants in just Game 3 of this 2019 NFL season. This is a guy that was much maligned when he was picked up by the New York Giants with the number 6 overall pick. You had a whole bunch of folks out there who thought it should have been Dwayne Haskins out of the Ohio State. Why? Because Haskins threw 50 touchdowns in one season, while Daniel Jones threw 52 touchdowns over 3 seasons at Duke. 52 touchdowns, 29 interceptions, albeit he was at Duke. On the level of competition, not only that he was playing against, but he was playing with. That does matter, ladies and gentlemen, and as a result, we've got to take that into consideration. But nevertheless, Daniel Jones was projected to be somebody that would sit on the bench, learn from Eli Manning, at least for his rookie year, and then after that, take over the helm and go about the business of being a quarterback, the franchise quarterback for the New York Giants moving into the future. Well, that is not how it has panned out. Daniel Jones has been incredibly impressive during the preseason, particularly his last preseason game when he went against the Cincinnati Bengals, their first unit, not the second or third units that he went against the New York Jets and somebody else in the preseason. Against the Cincinnati Bengals in their first unit, he completed like 9 of 11, or is either 9 or 11 or 11 or 14 passes for 141 yards and a touchdown. The accuracy, the ability to make throws, make necessary reads, go through your progressions, etc. These are all the things that folks were glowing about as it pertained to Daniel Jones. And as a result, considering the fact that Eli Manning and the New York Giants are 0-2, that they are wasting away the greatness of Saquon Barkley. They've already traded Odell Beckham Jr., they've missed the playoffs 6 times over the last 7 years. As a result, people were saying, it's time, it's time, it's time. And I got to admit, I agree. The reality of the situation is that Daniel Jones is the heir apparent. He's the franchise quarterback. And if the New York Giants hadn't spent the vast majority of the last 7 years stinking up the joint, maybe we would feel differently. But because they missed the playoffs 6 times in the last 7 years, because their lone playoff appearance was sullied by Odell Beckham Jr. at the time a New York Giant, having a Sunday game at Lambeau Field schedule, but on an off day in Miami, not violating any team rules, but on an off day, This guy decides to fly down to South Beach to hang with the fellas on a boat the week of a football game, and then he was targeted at the frozen tundra 11 times, only caught 4 passes for 28 yards, is something that a bevy of people have held against him. And so when you look at all of those different things that come down the pike that has contributed to sullying the New York Giants, you got to get to a point where you're willing to give the folks in New York some hope. This is the Mecca. It's the media capital of the world. There's over 8.5 million people in the city of New York alone. We didn't even include its the suburbs and its surrounding areas. We didn't do all of that. This is New York City. It's the number one city in terms of population and sizzle and all of that other stuff. It's number one. LA's the number 2 market. New York's the number 1 market. Well, guess what? In L.A., they got the reigning defending NFC champions in the Los Angeles Rams and a not-too-shabby team in the Los Angeles Chargers. New York, what does it have? It has the Jets and the Giants. This is basically the definition of football torture. I mean, both franchises are relatively inept. They've looked unimpressive continuously, and it's a damn shame that nothing hasn't been done about it. Now, in the New York Jets situation, we got a starting quarterback that came down with mononucleosis, a.k.a. the kissing disease. We're not making fun of him. I'm not doing that. What I would say to you is it's great news that Sam Darnold announced that he's allowed back into the building. He's no longer considered contagious, so he could be around the team, although it's a few weeks removed from him ultimately getting back behind center and in the starting lineup for the New York Jets. Fair enough. But what is he coming to? Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder are not number 1 receivers, although both can play. Le'Veon Bell, poor fella. Listen, this guy comes over from Pittsburgh. He sits out last season. He gets his money, $52.5 million, $27 million guaranteed. The hits he's taking, he's not going to last the whole season taking these hits. You got to do something for him. The defense, I understand that Jamal Adams made a mistake. Greg Williams has been a long-time defensive coordinator. I get all of that. I don't want to hear about benching Jamal Adams for a few plays. He anticipated something, took a risk, made a mistake against the Browns, and as a result, Greg Williams wanted to sit him. Damn that. This team ain't good enough to be sitting anybody that can play. But I digress. Getting back to the New York Giants and Daniel Jones. You have to do this. You just have to do this. I mean, enough's enough. The New York Giants have missed the playoffs 6 times in the last 7 years. They've been a moribund franchise. Everybody want to call them a standard. They ain't no damn standard if recent history comes into consideration. They're just not. I'm not trying to be negative. I root for the Giants and the Jets. Not as much as I root for the Steelers, but I root for them more than anybody else, other than the Steelers. I just got to tell you, as a native New Yorker, it's disgusting to watch the perpetual ineptitude that exists. You got Tom Coughlin there. You get rid of him. Ben McAdoo and Jerry Reese, the coach and the former coach and GM respectively, when they were there, they wanted to bench Eli Manning. Ownership didn't want them to do that, but they did it for 1 game. They were raked through the coals for it. And what did you bench him for? You ultimately had somebody like Geno Smith up in there. That wasn't going to work. They took hits. They ultimately lost their job because Jerry Reese kept making mistakes, if we're being honest. And Ben McAdoo was a chubby wannabe Pat Riley with a slick back hair and the shades. That was the only thing that was relatively interesting about him. But you're the New York Giants. You have an opportunity to make some noise. And let's count the waves. You're John Mara. You're Steve Tisch. You have an opportunity to ascend this franchise into a new era. Jerry Reese is gone. Ben McAdoo is gone. What do? You have an opportunity to hire somebody like our colleague here at ESPN, Mr. Louis Riddick, a former pro player personnel director, a guy that's worked with a multitude of NFL teams, not to mention played in the NFL, cerebral mind, highly intelligent about the sport of football, and incredibly measured. Got executive written all over him. All over him. Lives in Jersey, synonymous with the area, very knowledgeable about NFL talent and the NFL goings-ons, and he's there interviewing for the job, and you pass him up. Why? To give it to Dave Gettleman. Not me, because I've never spoken to Gettleman, but there are people in NFL circles, pundits and others, who call them and who associate the word liar with this man because they talk about how much he lies to folks. I didn't like the way he left in Carolina because he promised Josh Norman a new deal, ultimately pulled it from the table and let him go without having a backup plan after a Super Bowl season in 2015 in which Cam won MVP honors. And what have you done since? Left Ron Rivera holding the bag. He comes to New Jersey. You say you didn't sign Odell Beckham Jr. to trade him, but after giving him $95 million with over $65 million in guarantee, what the hell do? You trade him. And what did he do? Did he get arrested? No. Was he skipping practices and being unprofessional? No. He was basically a pain in the neck. So because you got to take some Tylenol or Advil or ibuprofen, that's a reason to trade one of the greatest talents we've ever seen at the wide receiver position. That's according to Dave Gettleman and the New York Giants. So him screaming on the sideline or him throwing his helmet into a net that ultimately hit him back or him not necessarily answering a question totally correctly when our very own Josina Anderson interviewed him. All right? So because of that, we got to get rid of it. But when you get rid of him, what did you really get rid of him for? You wanted him, his departure, to be a culture savior. That's what you wanted. So you basically said, we love Eli because Eli is class personified. And let me say this, ladies and gentlemen, they're right about that. Eli Manning is class. Eli Manning, Peyton Manning, the whole Manning family. All right on down to Cooper and Archie, everybody. I had the pleasure of interviewing not just Archie Manning before. I've interviewed Mama Manning before. Wonderful lady. Wonderful. I had to fill in for our very own Michael Kay on 98.7 FM in New York City years ago on a day where Eli Manning was scheduled to do his weekly interview with Michael Kay. And Eli was on the phone 5 minutes before the segment. He called in, not a publicist, not a manager, not somebody else. He did. This is Eli Manning we're talking about here. Eli Manning is one of the nicest dudes, one of the classiest professionals we've ever seen in this business. Class personified. It's impossible to root against him. And when we sit up there and dog him and talk about he ain't what he used to be, ladies and gentlemen, we're not calling him some scrub. We're saying Father Time's caught up. You're not what you used to be, man. Period. And because of that, the decision to bench him should have been made arguably a couple of years ago, certainly last year. But the New York Giants didn't have the courage to do it. So they go and they draft the quarterback. And you got Mr. Cutcliffe, Coach Cutcliffe at Duke, who once coached Peyton Manning, who once coached Eli Manning, and then coached as a head coach Daniel Jones at Duke the last few years. And since he works out the Mannings in the offseason, there's a chemistry and a camaraderie there. The New York Giants were clearly comfortable with that, so you got Daniel Jones. And he's your starter. And Eli Manning's going to sign off on it without making a scene and all of this other stuff. And so everything's got to be smooth and everything's got to be great. And there can be no friction and there can be no angst or anything like that. But is that winning you football games? Shouldn't the priority be about winning as opposed to necessarily hugging one another, singing Kumbaya and getting along? I mean, damn it, if we losing, I don't want to get along. I'd rather win and have a relatively contentious environment than have everything smooth and lose. Now, ideally, you want to have everything smooth while winning. That's the ideal situation to be in, but sometimes it don't work out that way. And if you're the New York Giants, here's the reality. Eli Manning is 116 as a career starting quarterback in the National Football League. That's a 500 record. Ain't nothing about that Hall of Fame. The only statistical category that Eli Manning has led anybody in at any point in time in his career is interceptions. I believe that was on 3 separate occasions. Before I rushed to work, I had an opportunity to watch my brother Chris Carter and his man Nick Wright, First Things First on Fox. I know they're the competition, but that's my brother Chris Carter there. So on occasion, when I get an opportunity to, I watch him and giving credit to Nick, because I ain't trying to steal nobody's thunder. He pointed out how Eli Manning ain't in top 5 in anything in his career. It's true. So when you look at all of those things, all of those ingredients, and you take all of those things into consideration, let's call it what it is. There's nothing about Eli Manning's regular season record that warrants him being in the Hall of Fame. But he has produced in the postseason. He's gone into San Francisco. He's won a game. He's gone to Green Bay. He's won a playoff game. He's won 2 Super Bowl championships. Both of them was over Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Now, I could make the argument that didn't help Tom Coughlin keep his job in New York. Why the hell should it help Eli? But that's neither here nor there. The bottom line is Eli Manning's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. And when Joe Namath, with a career QBR that would equate to about a 65 in his career, is in the Hall of Fame, I'll be damned if Eli Manning doesn't belong in the Hall of Fame. Yes, he does. He absolutely does. It's undeniable. We have to give credit where credit is due in that regard. Career 60% completion percentage, over 50,000 yards passing, 2-time Super Bowl champion, big-time playoff victories along the way, a 2-time Super Bowl MVP. He's in the Hall of Fame. Not in the elite room of the Hall of Fame, but he's up there. He's in there. But in the end, it is appropriate that the New York Giants made this call. It is appropriate that they decided to go in this direction. Because, ladies and gentlemen, as much as we don't want to admit it, the fans are owed something. And if there's one thing every fan should have a license to demand, is hope. You can't lose 6 times out of 7 years, missing the playoffs 6 times out of 7 years, and then talk about how the same quarterback got to keep his job. Can't do it. Can't do it. That's the equivalent of robbing fans of their money. You cannot do something like that. You cannot do something like that. It's wrong. It's absolutely positively wrong. And it needs to be said. It's just the truth. But despite it being the truth, and despite the fact that the New York Giants went into this direction, I got news for you. I'm not of the mindset that Eli Manning needs to retire. Because if I'm Eli Manning, 8-25 in my last 33 starts and in my NFL career, I don't want to go out like this. I want to be on a better team, a team with a better offensive line, a team with a better crop of receivers, especially now that you let Odell Beckham Jr. go, a team with an organizational structural plan that I can respect. Let me tell you something right now. If I'm Eli Manning, I got to try to find myself a better situation before I retire. And I certainly don't want to sit here holding a clipboard for the twilight of my career. I don't want to do that. He doesn't have to do that. He's made more money than almost any quarterback out there. Eli Manning has pocketed over $250 million. He's made his money playing football. He doesn't have to do this anymore. And if I'm Eli Manning, I'm here to tell you right now, married, I got 4 kids. I might love the area and all of that other stuff. I'd want to be out. I'd want my career to end better than this. Better than 8-25 record in my last 33 starts. Better than losing my job in game 3 of an NFL season to a rookie quarterback. Now, I want a situation that's better than that. I do. And oh, by the way, I'd want a better coach too, because here's the one thing that I'm tired. Listen, Pat Shermer's on the record talking about he went with his gut. His gut told him to go up to Dave Gettleman and say it's time for Daniel Jones. Gettleman and him went to management according to the reports. They said if that's how you feel and that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. So props to Mara, props to Tish for giving Gettleman and Shermer the power to make this call. Because if you remember, John Mara, the owner, was on the record saying, I hope to not see Daniel Jones at all this year because that would mean Eli Manning is doing great and we're winning football games. So I hope we don't see Daniel Jones at all. Well, guess what? You're already seeing him in week 3. I don't think it's premature. I think it's necessary. I think you have to give Giants fans a reason to hope that, we can do some things here. I really, really do. But I will say this about Pat Shermer. I'm not here to question the football acumen. I'm not qualified. I watch football as a fan and as a pundit and commentator and reporter. I do not watch it as a football aficionado, an expert who played or coached on that level, like Louis Riddick, like Ryan Clark, like Damian Woody, like Marcus Spears and Jeff Saturday and Matt and Tim Hasselbeck and Randy Moss and Teddy Bruschi and Rex Ryan and all of these boys. No, they played or coached the game. I did not. So understand, this is coming from a layman's perspective. I don't think Pat Shermer ever did anything to deserve this job. And I'm sick and tired of undeserving individuals getting these jobs. Pat Shermer, as an executive in the National Football League, as a head coach, his record is 15-36. That is a 29.4 winning percentage. When he coached in Cleveland, his record was 9-23. When he's coached the New York Giants, his record thus far is 5-13. Now, granted, they've been bereft of talent for the most part, and I do understand that. But the reality of the situation is, when we going to see progress? So when I look at Daniel Jones, I'm watching Pat Shermer because I don't necessarily believe he's the right man for this job. I remember when Bill Parcells was acquired by the New York Jets. I remember that Bill Parcells came in there, and there were question marks all over the place about how good they were going to be, and they were instantly contending. That's how you know this man can coach. I remember when Bill Parcells didn't have a Tom Brady and had a Drew Bledsoe instead. And what does he do? He takes New England to the Super Bowl where they lost to Brett Favre and the Green Bay Packers. I think it was Bledsoe. It's been, my memory might be a bit fogged. It was a long time ago. My point is, when Bill Parcells took over, you instantly knew he knew what he was doing because certain mistakes that were taking place prior to his arrival no longer existed. Talent that he had, although it wasn't elite, was maximized. These are the kind of things you look for from a coach. I don't see that in Pat Shermer. I don't see it. And he ain't the only one. I live at Cliff Kingsbury. You ain't do a damn thing at Texas Tech to deserve a head coaching job in the National Football League. I'm watching. Matt LaFleur at Green Bay. You were the offensive coordinator in Tennessee. That was the 27th ranked offense in the National Football League. What the hell did you do to get the Green Bay job? By the way, you were the 10th choice. You were the 10th interview. And somehow, some way, you were hired 3 hours after they met you. How the hell that happened? So I'm looking. Now, he is 2-0. And oh, by the way, he's 2-0, and the defense is playing better than they have in years. He deserves credit for that, but it does help that you got Aaron Rodgers. So I'm just looking at all of these things, and I'm saying, okay, I'm paying attention to that. Cliff Kingsbury, you ain't do a damn thing at Texas Tech. You get the job where you got the number 1 overall pick. I'm watching Kyler Murray. Because I'm very, very big on what did you do to earn the opportunity that you got. The answer would be nothing. In Cliff Kingsbury's case, it would be nothing in Pat Shermer's case. I'm not saying they don't deserve jobs in the NFL. I'm not saying that they don't deserve to receive a check from an NFL team. I'm not accusing them of not knowing football. I'm not qualified. I'm saying their record states they didn't deserve these opportunities. Why the hell they get them? That's what I'm saying. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. That was Straight Talk Wireless. Everything for less only at Walmart. Stick around. Don't touch that dial. I'll get to your phone calls and more in a minute. Not just about Eli Manning and the New York Giants, but also about Cam Newton, also about Jalen Ramsey and others. So stick around. Again, you're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, when it comes to hiring, we all know where it's time to go. We all know what it's time to talk about. The New York Giants have finally decided to get their acts together. It has been announced that Daniel Jones, quarterback out of Duke, the number 6 overall pick in this past April's NFL draft, is the new starting quarterback for the New York Giants. Eli Manning, 232 career starts since 2004 NFL record. It has come to an end. It's not consecutive starts because Bob McAdoo, the chubby Pat Riley wannabe who decided to bench Eli Manning a couple of years ago, ended up losing his job along with the GM That's not going to be the case for Pat Shurmur. Here's the situation. Daniel Jones has been named the starter for Sunday's game at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Since 2017, Eli Manning, third worst QBR, fifth fewest yards per attempt, minimum 500 pass attempts. Eli Manning is not what he used to be. I know there's a lot of people that might question this. I have no problem with this move by Dave Gettleman, by Pat Shurmur, by John Mara, by Mr. Tisch, by the Giants organization. It is absolutely positively the right move to make. And here's a couple of reasons, a few reasons as to why that is. New York Giants are 0-2 on the year. New York Giants have looked absolutely putrid offensively. Even worse defensively, by the way. Ranked 30th in the National Football League in points allowed. Ranked 28th in yards allowed. Ranked 30th in yards allowed overall. In passing yards allowed, 18th against the run. The only thing decent about them is their rushing attack because Saquon Barkley is clearly the best running back in football talent-wise.
The start to this season was not what this team wanted or expected.
You're the Giants. It makes all the sense in the world.
Sending their two-time Super Bowl winning quarterback to the bench.
Eli's not getting benched because of his play. He's getting benched because that defense and that team is not a playoff contender.
I don't understand the move at this point.
They believed it was time to turn the page, end the Eli era, and start a new one with Daniel Jones.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
If you missed any of to 1.5% cash back on every purchase, everywhere. Hey, what's in your wallet? Also, a reminder that Golic and Wingo will be live from New York this Friday, covering the Jets-Patriots matchup, part of ESPN Radio's Fall Football Tour. Brought to you by Marathon. Get 5 cents off every gallon every day with Make It Count rewards for Marathon. To sign up, visit MakeItCount.com or download the free app. 888-SAY-ESPN, that's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Always great to have my next guest on the line, former Super Bowl champion with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Obviously a tremendous NFL analyst for ESPN. Does a phenomenal job for us on NFL Live. Shows up on First Take several times a week. Catch him on SportsCenter, particularly on Sunday evenings after the games. Doing a great job for us. I'm talking about the one and only Ryan Clark. He's live right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. What's up, big boy? How are you, man?
What's up, my man? How you doing?
All right, what the hell was up with today, man, when you just had on a V-neck shirt and you didn't have on no shirt and tie or whatever? What's up with that? You trying to flex and show everybody how much shape you in compared to the rest of us? I mean, what was that about, Ryan?
I've been in the gym, man. I've been in the gym, and the people need to know. The people, hey.
Ryan, who am I to talk? I'll be looking for you in about 2 months. I'll be looking for you in about 2 months, Ryan. I need all the help I can get, bro. I need all the help I can get. Ryan Clark right here with Stephen A. at ESPN. Listen, Ryan, you heard the news about the Giants electing to bench Eli Manning in favor of Daniel Jones. What was your initial reaction? How do you feel about it now?
Say it again, my man. I couldn't hear you. What'd you say?
I said you heard the news about Eli Manning being benched in favor of Daniel Jones. How did you feel about it then? Yesterday, how do you feel about it now?
Should have happened a long time ago. I think, a lot of people understood that Daniel Jones earned this. You understand what Eli has done for this team and for this organization, but don't you think we let this go on about 4 years too long? And you go out, you draft Daniel Jones, and this is a guy you want to sit, but he shows you throughout the offseason and OTAs and training camp and preseason that he's ready to play. And what they did now was they sent Eli out there to show us that this team isn't good enough to win, that Eli isn't good enough to be the starting quarterback of the New York Giants. And so now we know the expectations are so low that Daniel Jones can't fail. But I believe if you started with Daniel Jones, this team would have a different hope, a different excitement, and move in a different way than it has these first 2 games. So to me, this decision is 3 weeks too late.
Ryan Clark, is this more about Daniel Jones and your belief in him, or is this about the New York Giants finally saying, look, y'all, Eli's just not good enough anymore. We're not even fighting it?
I think they're now making it that it's about Daniel Jones. But if it was about Daniel Jones, Stephen A., don't you think you saw enough before the season started? Nothing has changed in that time except that we've seen that this defense is more talent depleted than we even imagined before the season. And you also know that Eli Manning is done. But Eli Manning doesn't look any different than he looked last year or he looked the year before when he had Odell Beckham Jr. And so this is now a decision being made because they aren't putting a good product on the field. I've talked to different people, and they said Pat Shurmur wanted Daniel Jones, both when he drafted him and both to start this season as the starting quarterback of this team. But they had a plan. They respected Eli and the way he'd gone about his business, so they wanted to stick to that plan and see what this team could be. But even they didn't imagine it would look this bad, so it was time to make a change.
Ryan Clark, NFL analyst extraordinaire for ESPN, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Is Pat Shurmur somebody New Yorkers should believe in?
I don't think so. I mean, he's had this opportunity before, and he didn't do well then. Obviously, you see when he took over this team for McAdoo, it wasn't a team that had a ton of talent, but you did have Odell Beckham Jr., you did have Landon Collins, and Dave Gettleman comes in and gets rid of those players. And so now you have a talent-depleted team with a coach who hasn't proven he could be successful as a head coach in this league, with a coach who hasn't proven he could motivate players to want to play and do the things and have the type of energy needed to win football games. So right now, the jury is not out on him. Right now, he's guilty, and so he can prove to us that he's innocent and prove to us that he is a good coach. And if I'm a New Yorker, if I'm a fan of this team, I believe the best thing that's going to happen to this team is when Daniel Jones gets a new head coach and they move into the future.
But doesn't he get to somewhat hide behind Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones is a rookie, his first career start, game 3 of this season? Doesn't that buy Pat Shurmur some time in terms of avoiding being ridiculed as extensively as we're tempted to do?
I believe it will buy him time, but not necessarily as much as starting Daniel Jones right away this season would have, because now it looks like, you see the season is failing, so you're going to put Daniel Jones in and let him play now when you made the decision as an organization at the beginning of the year to go with Eli. You thought that was your best chance of winning, and you don't get to be let out of that bad decision just because you can come back and correct it 2 weeks later. So Pat Shurmur is going to be judged on what this team looks like with Daniel Jones. He is going to be judged on what type of progression Daniel Jones makes as a first-year starter throughout this season from week 3 to week 17. And I don't believe it lets him off the hook. This team's going to have to show progress. This team's going to have to show that there is some life in it as it pertains to working to win football games in New York. And if he doesn't show that, I think that Dave Gettleman could be looking for a new coach. Even though these guys are tied together from a certain standpoint, Dave Gettleman also knows he is more closely tied to his draft pick, Daniel Jones, his success, and how that success brings wins to the New York Giants.
Ryan Clark, let's transition to the AFC because there's news emanating out of Jacksonville. Jalen Ramsey obviously wants to be traded. He believes it's time for him to go. He's not the one that leaked the information. His camp is not the one that leaked the information, but nevertheless, it's out. Where do you believe the best landing spot is for him? And do you believe he's completely justified in demanding to get the hell up out of Jacksonville?
I believe he's justified. I can't say I would have believed it before now. I don't necessarily believe you can say you want out of a place because you don't get a deal before, the last year of your contract, which he has this year and also the 5th-year option. I don't believe you can ask out of a place because you have Blake Bortles as your quarterback and the offense hasn't provided for you enough wins. But when you have an altercation like you have on the sideline with Doug Marrone, and this doesn't absolve Jalen Ramsey of any culpability, of any guilt in this situation. But when your head coach, after a situation has dissipated, when he walks over to get in the face of a player, that's an issue. And then when you speak on Tuesday, and when asked, have you spoken to that head coach, there's been no conversation. That means there's a relationship there that can't be mended. That means that there's a relationship there that there's no repair for. And so if this is the way you're going to be treated, if coaches are going to get in your face, we obviously know Jalen Ramsey can't retaliate in that situation, then it's time to go. If we can't conduct ourselves in a way where there is mutual respect, then that's not the place for me. And, you've seen the rumors of Kansas City, I think more so because that's the place people want Jalen Ramsey to go. They would love to see Jalen Ramsey along with that offense so someone has an opportunity to beat the Kansas City Chiefs. He stated that he'd play in Oakland or that he'd play in Seattle. And so it's not necessarily right now where is the best fit for him, but it'll be which team is willing to take him, and also have to understand that along with taking Jalen Ramsey and giving up, whether it's 2 first-rounder or a first-rounder plus, you have to be willing to get this long-term deal done in the manner in which he wants it.
Looking at the New England Patriots, seeing that Antonio Brown is on this squad, it was almost like we're calling them the Golden State Warriors of the NFL. The New England Patriots are absolutely loaded. Nobody's going to beat them. But if the Kansas City Chiefs, with Patrick Mahomes leading the way, were to get Tyreek Hill back healthy and acquire Jalen Ramsey, what does that do as it pertains to the balance of power in the AFC as far as you're concerned, Ryan Clark?
It makes the Kansas City Chiefs a different team because the Kansas City Chiefs aren't rich at talent at the cornerback position. That's a position of need for them, even though, you have a young Breland who Tyrann Mathieu said played to the standard last week. He's no Jalen Ramsey. We understand that the Kansas City Chiefs will be able to score points with anyone in the league. But the one thing the New England Patriots have this year that I think more than any year in the recent times of Tom Brady's career is they have a legit top defense. Stephon Gilmore is in the category and conversation with Jalen Ramsey for best lockdown corner in the league. So Jalen Ramsey wouldn't necessarily tip the power, Stephen A., but he would definitely even it off. He would definitely give you a situation where you could say, okay, Josh Gordon or Antonio Brown, Jalen Ramsey, we're going to line you up across from that guy, and we will play zone away from you because we feel you can match up one-on-one and take these guys out. And the reason you know that is because you've seen Jalen Ramsey do it before. If I'm Jalen Ramsey and if I'm Kansas City, that is something I want. If he is truly about winning, as he said in his press conference, there is no better place for him to be, Stephen A.
Last question on a different note, real quick. You're a former member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. You won a title with this organization. You still have very close ties and roots to the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. With Big Ben Roethlisberger, it being announced that he is out for the year, are you with me when I say the Steelers season is over? They're finished.
I am. Can I also say this, Stephen A.? I don't know how much of a season they would have had with Big Ben. I just watching him play, watching these young wide receivers, there was no chemistry, there was no energy. I actually believe it's a good thing that Ben is out. Not that I want him to be hurt, but now you've taken the expectations of this season away, right? You've taken away, can Big Ben do it? Can Mike Tomlin and Big Ben find a way to make a team that has lost an Antonio Brown, that has lost a Le'Veon Bell? Can that team compete? Can that team win the AFC North? Now nobody believes in this team. Now you have a rallying cry. Now Mike Tomlin can go in on Monday and get this team together and coach it from a stripped-down perspective as we grow and progress together. There is no Moncrief, there is no James Washington, Juju Smith-Schuster feeling bad or coming back to the huddle dejected because he ran the wrong route. Because he's going to get back to Mason Rudolph and say, I'm going to do it better next time. And Mason Rudolph's going to say, hey, brother, we're in this thing together. And so I think this is a good thing for this team. They can now evaluate it from the standpoint of how they move forward. And you'll find out if Mason Rudolph can be your quarterback of the future. You add a piece in Minka Fitzpatrick. So now you say, okay, we have a young nucleus. Can this young nucleus be the new era of the Pittsburgh Steelers? Because with Ben getting hurt, it's the old one is over.
Ryan Clark, got to get on out of here. Go ahead and do your thing. NFL Live, Sports Center, and beyond. Appreciate your contribution to First Take and the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio as well, my man. Take it easy. We'll talk soon.
Thank you, my boy. I appreciate it.
All right. One and only Ryan Clark right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. We'll get you your calls and more before closing out hour number 1, so stick around. Don't touch that dial. It's Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Nick.
How come nobody's calling Colin Kaepernick? You trying to tell me the Jets don't need Colin Kaepernick? Some dude named Luke Falk is starting for the New York Jets Sunday. Didn't have a bad game last night, so I'm not about to cast any aspersions on them, but are you kidding me? Colin Kaepernick can't get a call? Not a call? Mike Tomlin adroitly avoided the issue of Colin Kaepernick when asked by the media because he said, I'm not talking about anybody that's not on this roster. Steelers are not interested in Colin Kaepernick from what I've been told. New Orleans Saints, with Drew Brees out for the next several weeks due to his thumb injury, haven't even returned calls to Colin Kaepernick's agent. The New York Jets, we don't know where their interest lies. At some point in time, regardless of what we want to say, how Colin Kaepernick could have elected to handle things in the aftermath of kneeling. Two things are undeniable. A, he broke no laws legally. And B, he violated no bylaws by the National Football League. We could add C, that the president himself said he wouldn't mind seeing Colin Kaepernick play. So there's no longer that to be concerned about with the owners. So what's the problem? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying that Colin Kaepernick should be granted a roster spot and automatically a starting or a backup quarterback. That's not what I'm claiming here. What I'm claiming, ladies and gentlemen, he don't deserve a tryout. I spoke again to his lady, Nessa Diab. Say what you will about her. Very beautiful lady, inside and out, it seems. Very, very nice to me. Class personified. She says he's waking up 5 a.m. every day, 5 days a week. Training for hours upon hours every day, and he's been doing that for the last 2 years. So if he gets the call, he's immediately ready. That's what she says. Took a knee, addressing racial oppression, racial inequality, brutality on the part of police officers. He did all of that.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News is being brought to you by the new Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline. Now with 4 levels of defense against gunk, wear, corrosion, and friction. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Hour number 2 is next, and I'm going to get into a little basketball. Kevin Durant had some things to say a few weeks ago in an article that was written about his time with the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry responded. He spoke to our very own Rachel Nichols in an interview yesterday. Some of those excerpts were aired today. We'll discuss that, KD, the Golden State Warriors, and more. Hour number 2 up next.
From coast to coast, the Stephen A. Smith Show starts right now.
plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. From the biggest concerts and games to the hottest theater shows and more, Vivid Seats has it all. Download the app and join the Vivid Seats Rewards loyalty program today. Also, ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Drivers who switch and save pay an average of $699 less per year. I'm going to get into what I told you about. We've been talking about Eli Manning and Jalen Ramsey in hour number 1. Hour number 2, I'm about to get into Kevin Durant and Steph Curry just a little bit. But allow me to veer left for a second here or a few minutes actually, and inform my listeners nationwide what's going on with me this upcoming Friday. For those of you who don't know, many of you already know, I was named the ambassador for HBCU Week, scheduled for this Friday, September 20th, live at Delaware State University. First Take will be in the house. My television show on every weekday morning with Max Kellerman and Molly Kiram on the ESPN from 10 a.m. to noon. The show will be live from 76ers Fieldhouse in Wilmington, Delaware, this Friday from 10 a.m. to noon. And obviously thousands of people are expected to show. I think the capacity is anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000. We're actually expecting more than that. And it's in celebration of HBCU Week. HBCU Week, this is the third annual HBCU Week. It was not started by myself. The co-creators of the event was a gentleman by the name of Earl Cooper, another lovely lady by the name of Ashley Christopher, who've done a phenomenal job. They work for the mayor's office, Mayor Persecki, in Wilmington, Delaware. Governor John Carney's involved, both U.S. senators, especially Senator Chris Coon, who I've had the pleasure of meeting and talking to in the past. He's expected to be a part of it as well. Magic Johnson is coming in the house because he's a vendor and does business with HBCUs. Troy Vincent, the executive VP for the National Football League, who starred for the Eagles over the course of many years in the National Football League. He's going to be willing, obviously, to address the corporate side of things. For those of you who don't know, the NFL does an outstanding job in terms of trying to contribute to HBCUs as well, because what they do is just a couple of years ago when the Super Bowl was in Houston, they acknowledged and publicized their partnership with the SWAC conference, the CIAA conference, the MEAC conference, the SAIC conference. And, you know, what happens is that they've tried to encourage graduates from HBCUs to get involved and participate in sports management. So the NFL has opened its doors of opportunities to some folks coming from HBCUs, which is obviously they deserve major kudos on that. And Troy Vincent is going to be in attendance to speak about those things along with a bevy of other issues, of course. As the ambassador, essentially, my role is to help bring attention to HBCUs and the kind of benefits that it offers. 3% of our population, you know, black population ends up going to the HBCUs, but it also ends up materializing into over 30 to 40% of folks working in the field of education and beyond, dentistry and other various professions. They emanate from HBCUs. And so when you look at folks coming from impoverished backgrounds, particularly from the minority communities, my goal has always been to bring attention to HBCUs and the values that it can have in a multitude of lives out there. I am an HBCU graduate. I graduated from Winston-Salem State University in December of 1991, marched in May of 1992. I can't say enough about what Winston-Salem State has done for me. Clarence Big House Gaines, the legendary Clarence Big House Gaines, what he meant to me as a huge father figure in my life, someone that I loved and adored tremendously. And even though others have played, I always joke about how I tried to play. And he always joked about, boy, you better do something with your life and you better give back to this university because you robbed us of a scholarship with your non-playing self, your injured knee self and all of that stuff. But he was incredibly good to me. And I always promised him that I would do what I can. I would do my part, as little as it may be, to do what I can to bring attention to HBCUs by the manner in which I conducted myself, the manner in which I achieved certain things, and the kind of attention that I helped bring to HBCUs. Is, for those of you who may not know, I dedicated about $250,000 to the university a few years back. I've been fulfilling that promise. I will continue to do so. And the more I get, the more I'll make sure to give. Make no mistake about that. But I'm also doing this not just for my alma mater, but for HBCUs across the nation. In excess of 100 of them exist. And 25 of those schools will be in attendance HBCU week for the HBCU Fair this Friday, September 20th, throughout the day at Delaware State. You're talking Norfolk State, A&T, Spelman, Morehouse, Bennett College, Winston-Salem State University. The list goes on and on. It's going to be like 25 different colleges that are going to be in attendance. If you are a senior and you have your senior in high school and you have your transcript on hand with your requisite ACT or SAT score, you could get a scholarship to an HBCU on the spot. Those things will be offered. Enrollment to HBCUs will be offered. In excess of $1 million in scholarships have been given out in the past. We're expecting that number to exceed above $2 million this go round. This is my first year being involved in it. Certainly my first time as the ambassador. It's very, very important to me. I hope you all can appreciate that and be willing to assist in any way that you can. I'd also like to take a moment to give thanks to Mayor Persecki, to Governor Carney, to Earl Cooper and Ashley Christopher and all of those folks in Wilmington, Delaware. This is their thing. They created this a couple of years ago before I even knew about it. And what they've done has been nothing short of phenomenal. And I've developed somewhat of a professional friendship and relationship with Mayor Persecki, who I admire and tremendously respect. And I love the fact that his heart is in such a good place. And he, along with his staff, are committed to doing an exceptional job that they've been doing. And the governor's been involved as well. These are great, great people doing great, great things and looking out for folks that, quite frankly, they don't have to. And you can't say enough about them. You also want to take a moment to say this. I work for ESPN. I've been working for ESPN since 2003. I was gone for a couple of years, but for the vast majority of my years since 2003, I have been here with ESPN. And I cannot thank them enough for their involvement. Ladies and gentlemen, I work for First Take. I might be the star of First Take, and you got the ratings and all of that other stuff, but I'm not the boss. They're the bosses. It's their show, okay? Dave Roberts, Norby Williamson, Connor Shell, Jimmy Pitaro, can't thank them enough. Didn't have to do this. They're under no obligation whatsoever to have First Take broadcast live from that event on Friday. But they made it happen. I didn't bring Magic Johnson in. They did. He's coming for me, but make no mistake about it, they're taking care of the logistics. Same thing with Troy Vincent. Same thing with the marching bands. Same thing with the students that are coming there. Can't say enough. Roosevelt High School, Long Island, they're going to be in attendance. About 50 kids coming from there. Looking forward to that as well. And I can't say enough. I asked ESPN to air First Take live from this event this Friday. They said yes in 1 second. There was no hemming and hawing. There was no debate. There was nothing. It was an instant yes. And so it just reminds me of ESPN's commitment to HBCUs as well. And it's not the first time that they've done things for HBCUs. And as long as I'm here, I think it's fairly certain that it won't be the last. But it doesn't mean that they don't deserve tremendous thanks and kudos for it, nor does it mean that they don't deserve my gratitude. Again, I work for ESPN. I am not the boss of ESPN. I don't get to make that call. The wonderful bosses that I've had have stepped up and recognize the importance of contributing to disenfranchised and impoverished communities in terms of introducing them to HBCUs and elevating the profiles of HBCUs across this country. Historically black colleges and universities, for those of you out there who don't know what HBCU stands for. That's what it means, historically black colleges and universities. I cannot thank ESPN enough, and I just want to extend my gratitude to my employers here as well. Thank you so much. I'll do my part to make sure that it is a festive event this Friday, September 20th. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. I hope the rest of you as well. I'm going to try to turn it out for y'all. That's all I can say. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. One of the things that I wanted to get to, is Kevin Durant and his stay with the Golden State Warriors. Reading from the Mercury News a little more than a week ago, Kevin Durant on joining and leaving the Warriors. I'll never be one of those guys. That was the headline. And essentially, he spoke about it. And, you know, one of the authors said Kevin Durant hates the way people are forever guessing about his psyche, which is another reason he hates the NBA. I don't think Kevin Durant hates the NBA. I think there are things that he wishes that it didn't do or wasn't about. That's one of the things. But I think overall, he's somebody that appreciates what the NBA has done for his life, his family's life, et cetera, et cetera. So I certainly wouldn't go that far, and I'm qualified to say that. I know Kevin Durant a little bit. We've had our ups and downs. I just appeared on a boardroom with him, with Jay Williams moderating, and that's going to come out soon. You can catch that on ESPN+. You do not want to miss that. Kevin Durant and myself sitting across from one another for a full hour, going back and forth on a plethora of issues. So I'm looking forward to everybody seeing that. But nevertheless, getting back to his points, about playing in Golden State. He said, I came in there wanting to be a part of a group, wanting to be a part of a family, and definitely felt accepted, he said, but I'll never be one of those guys. I didn't get drafted there. Steph Curry, obviously drafted there. Andre Iguodala won the first finals, first championship. Klay Thompson drafted there. Draymond Green drafted there, et cetera, et cetera. Kevin Durant goes on to say, it's very rare in our lives when we envision and picture something and it comes together the perfect way you envision it. He was talking about signing with the Brooklyn Nets. The first title was the only time in my life that happened, and that summer was the most exhilarating time. Every day I woke up, I just felt so good about myself, so good about life. That was a defining moment in my life, not just my basketball life, right? As did familiarity breed contempt. Kevin Durant, the motion offense we run in Golden State, it only works to a certain point. We can totally rely on only our system for maybe the first 2 rounds. That's what he was talking about, alluding to Steve Kerr. Then the next 2 rounds, we're going to have to mix in individual play. We've got to throw teams off because they're smarter in that round of playoffs. So now I had to dive into my bag deep to create stuff on my own, off the dribble, ISOs, pick and rolls, more so than let the offense create my points for me. He said he wanted to go someplace where he'd be free to hone that sort of improvisational game throughout the regular season. And now he's off to Brooklyn. That was Kevin Durant speaking. Steph Curry, obviously, the star of the Golden State Warriors. It is his team. No one will be a bigger star for the Golden State Warriors than the one and only Steph Curry. You could bet the house on that. Here was him responding, his thoughts on Kevin Durant choosing to leave. Listen to this.
K, made a decision for himself, and that's you can't argue that. If I wish we could play with K. He's an unbelievable talent, unbelievable person. We accomplished a lot together, but things have changed a little bit. So we got the battle down the road. So it should be a fun new experience on that front too.
Steph Curry also spoke about Kevin Durant saying he never felt accepted by the team. Listen to Steph Curry here.
I mean, that's tough. There's so many narratives that go on, especially when you're at the top of the league. But at the end of the day, I think he knows, what we were about as teammates, what we were about as friends on and off the court, whatever he, needed to do to make that decision, and however he wants to explain that, that's what's going to happen.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let me break this down for y'all. Here's the deal. Kevin Durant goes to the Golden State Warriors. He went there to capture rings, but he also went there because he felt that the system catered to him and his gifts a little bit better and that he would mature and grow as a basketball player. Fair enough. Nevertheless, what it came down to is this. Was the idea, was it an acerbic and abrasive relationship with guys? No. Had that one bad incident in public with Draymond Green. But essentially, Kevin Durant was a relative loner. The team did their thing. He did his thing. Is it right that he never felt a part of the family? Speaking to some members of the Golden State Warriors, it certainly appeared that way. They felt that he was separate and apart to some degree from the team, that he kept to himself, that he was private, that he didn't necessarily let people in. That was the only critical thing that I had ever heard about Kevin Durant from his teammates or from any member of the organization. Having said all of that, is it plausible that he and Draymond Green didn't have the greatest relationship? That Draymond Green don't give a damn that he's gone? Hell yes, it's plausible. Because here's the thing that you have to understand about Draymond Green. First of all, I love the brother, so don't expect a critical word about Draymond Green from me. I love the brother, and I love him for this reason. He is as real as it gets. He's not a liar. He's the kind of person, he either likes you or he doesn't. And he ain't shy about letting you know it. You, not hearing it from somebody else, he'll tell you. And there were certainly things that he didn't like about Kevin Durant, whatever those things are. He was never specific. He never said that he didn't like him. You could just tell that the level of affection that he had for the Klay Thompsons and Steph Currys of the world, it wasn't shared that way for Kevin Durant ultimately. Was it that way when Kevin Durant first arrived? Yes. Was it that way when they won the second championship? Yes. But once Kevin Durant was destined to be a free agent this upcoming summer, and it was clear he had one foot out the door in their eyes, it was undeniable that Draymond Green had some feelings about that. But I still think everybody's missing the boat. And it ain't got nothing to do with Steph, because it's impossible not to love Steph, and it's impossible to have an abrasive relationship with Steph. Steph is the golden boy of the Golden State Warriors, true. But Steph is selfless. Steph is unselfish. Steph doesn't mind sharing the wealth. He made flagrant sacrifices to bring Kevin Durant in and to get him maturated into the situation and the system in Golden State. And when Kevin Durant went down after he tried to come back in Game 5 and had to be escorted to the locker room, it was Steph Curry that was behind him, patting him on the shoulder and walking him to that locker room, because there's a level of class and decency and genuine affection that Steph Curry has for everybody. Everybody, including me. Hell, I go to him for golf club advice, for crying out loud. Steph Curry's the man. He's a special dude. But you know who else is special? Which is why it's surprising that I have to say what I have to say. Steve Kerr. What's undeniable is that Kevin Durant did not have the greatest relationship with Steve Kerr. I don't know why. I never talked to Kevin Durant about that. Never talked to Steve Kerr about that. But what I've been told, they did not have the greatest relationship. The exact words that I was told, in fact, is that Kevin Durant wasn't feeling Steve Kerr. Wasn't too keen on hearing anything he had to say. Period. People didn't even know why. Now, that's a shocker to me, because I happen to think that Steve Kerr is one of the nicest people you could ever meet in your life. Very classy, conscientious, thoughtful, and clearly a brilliant coach, without question. Well, what he's done in Golden State, you cannot deny the job that Steve Kerr has done. Can't deny it. But the fact that he didn't necessarily vibe with Kevin Durant, it's not like Kevin Durant disrespected him, not like they didn't talk or anything like that. I heard he was not feeling him, but that's all I heard. Makes you wonder what life would have been like if Mark Jackson was coaching Kevin Durant. One question you could sit there and say, would Mark Jackson have won championships with this team? I say yes. The other question you could ask is, would Kevin Durant have wanted to leave if Mark Jackson was the coach instead of Steve Kerr? I don't know the answer to that question. Time will tell, remains to be seen. We shall see. I don't know. But I do know that Kevin Durant did feel separate and apart from the rest of the team. I do know that's the impression that he gave folks within the organization, maybe with the exception of Bob Myers, the general manager. And I'm quite surprised that somebody like Steve Kerr doesn't get much better than Steve Kerr, y'all, as a coach or a person. I don't understand why Kevin Durant wasn't feeling him. Never asked him. But I don't know why. But I do know that was the case. So take that in any way you can. Take that for what it is. One of the other things KD said to the Wall Street Journal, as my time went on, I started to realize I'm just different from the rest of the guys. It's not a bad thing, just my circumstances, how I came up in the league. And on top of that, the media always looked at it like KD and the Warriors. So it's like nobody could get a full acceptance of me there. That's what Kevin Durant said. That's what Kevin Durant said. No way around it. 888-SAY-ESPN, that's 888-729-3776. Back with your calls and more in a minute. Also, Tillman Fertitta, the owner for the Houston Rockets. He'll be on with yours truly in a few. Don't touch that dial. It's the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, when it comes to hiring, you don't have time to waste. You need to get to your short list of qualified candidates fast. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screening questions based on your job requirements, then zero. We all know where it's time to go. We all know what it's time to talk about. The New York Giants have finally decided to get their acts together. It has been announced that Daniel Jones, quarterback out of Duke, the number 6 overall pick in this past April's NFL draft, is the new starting quarterback for the New York Giants. Eli Manning, 232 career starts since 2004 NFL record. It has come to an end. It's not consecutive starts because Bob McAdoo, the chubby Pat Riley wannabe who decided to bench Eli Manning a couple of years ago, ended up losing his job along with the GM. That's not going to be the case for Pat Shurmur. Here's the situation. Daniel Jones has been named the starter for Sunday's game at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Since 2017, Eli Manning, 3rd worst QBR, 5th fewest yards per attempt, minimum 500 pass attempts. Eli Manning is not what he used to be. I know there's a lot of people that might question this. I have no problem with this move by Dave Gettleman, by Pat Shurmur, by John Mara, by Mr. Tisch, by the Giants organization. It is absolutely, positively the right move to make. And here's a couple of reasons, a few reasons as to why that is. New York Giants are 0-2 on the year. New York Giants have looked absolutely putrid offensively. Even worse defensively, by the way. Ranked 30th in the National Football League in points allowed. Ranked 28th in yards allowed. Ranked 30th in yards allowed overall. In passing yards allowed, 18th against the run. The only thing decent about them is their rushing attack because Saquon Barkley is clearly the best running back in football talent-wise.
Everybody loves Kevin Durant. Everybody.
Kevin Durant is the finals MVP. It's everything he said he wanted. And he just wasn't happy enough about it.
You just wonder, what's up with this dude?
Now that we know that he's like this, I don't know that the reaction should be simply to just shrug and say, stop being so sensitive.
I have no idea what the hell happened to this dude. I mean, he ain't never happy.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
From New York this Friday, covering the Jets-Patriots matchup, part of ESPN Radio's Fall Football Tour. Brought to you by Marathon. Get 5 cents off every gallon every day with Make It Count rewards from Marathon. To sign up, visit MakeItCount.com or download the free app. Welcome back to Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, the New York Jets are 23-point underdogs against the New England Patriots this Sunday. The Dolphins are 21-point underdogs against the Cowboys this Sunday. Those heavy underdogs, it marks the first time two teams are favored, meaning the Cowboys and Patriots, by 20-plus points in the same week since 1987. That was the strike-shortened season when the NFL used replacement players. Shows you how bad things are looking for the Jets and the Dolphins right now. Let's go to the phones before Tillman Fertitta, owner for the Houston Rockets, calls in. Let's go right to it. Let's see. Let's go to DeMario. You're live with Stephen A. Real quick, DeMario, go.
Hey, how you doing, Stephen A?
I'm all right. Real quick. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, I was just calling, man. I support you, what you're doing for the community. I'm an HBCU graduate. I was just calling to say, how do you feel about KD, man, leaving? Do you think if he had Mark Jackson there as a basketball fan and as a black man in these fields and these positions like yourself and like you gave credit to your job, ESPN, who's the boss, how do you feel about if Mark Jackson would have been there? Do you think things would have been a little different?
I think it might have been a little different, but the bottom line is you can't argue with the job that Steve Kerr did. He won 2 titles, and he's taken them to the finals every single year. He's been there all 5 years. They won 3 titles, 2 with KD. 3 titles altogether, lost the other 2. One could have argued they could have easily won the second one, and LeBron wouldn't have ever won that championship in Cleveland if the NBA hadn't given LeBron and Cleveland that stimulus package by suspending Draymond Green for that bogus kick after LeBron threw him to the damn court at that particular moment in time. So I don't like that. But I got to go right now, because on the line, I have a guy who's one of my favorite people in all of the NBA. He is the owner for the Houston Rockets. Obviously, he's got a new book out. It is entitled Shut Up and Listen, Hard Business Truths That Will Help You Succeed. It was released yesterday, September 17th. I'm talking about the one and only Tillman Fertitta, the owner for the Houston Rockets. He's on the line with us right now. What's going on, buddy? How are you, sir?
Oh, just in New York, getting around a little bit and watching you on First Take and your show and getting educated on the sports world.
Well, I appreciate it, man. Let's talk about the education that you're providing. You have this book. You're talking about this book, Hard Business Truths, okay, that will help you succeed. Talk to me about what inspired you to write this book, and what do you believe people will get out of it most?
You know, Stephen A., I was doing a television show, Billion Dollar Buyer, on CNBC, and just people over the years have watched me on all the business shows and all the articles, and HarperCollins came to me and said, hey, Tillman, why don't you write a book? We don't want a life story. We want to know how you did it. We want to know how you went from one restaurant to being Forbes' richest restaurateur and one of the richest guys in the United States. And I said, you know, I've been very fortunate, but I have all these little Tillmanisms and things I live by, and the 95-5 rule, and take the word no out of your vocabulary. There are no spare customers. Change, be plappy. And so I just kind of talk about everything I did, and it's a self-improvement book. It's a business book, but I don't care if you're going to work at ESPN as an intern, or for me, or if you're an entrepreneur. It's just how to live and do the right thing, and we're in the hospitality business. You're in the hospitality business. You know how to take care of your guests. You know how to handle things, and that's what we all do every day, is say yes and take care of people.
Tillman, what is the 95-5 rule?
This is something that I started years and years ago when I would be training my general managers myself. 95% of everything is right. So look for the 5% that's wrong. And it's just like I used to say, all right, guys, before you open your shift, go out in the parking lot. Is there Coke bottles in the parking lot? Are there cigarette butts and candy wrappers around the front door? Or are there any burnout lights? Is there any dead plants in the garden as you walk in? Is there smudges on the front window? Because you set the tone for your customer. If everything's right out there, then they're probably decent operators inside. If you're not a good operator, you're not even going to take care of the outside of your building, much less the inside. So it's looking for the 5% that's wrong. No different than you. When you're getting ready for your show in the morning, what am I missing? What can I do to make this show better? And that's the 95-5 rule.
Tillman Fertitta, owner for the Houston Rockets, right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. The man started out with one restaurant. The man is worth about $5 billion right now. Tillman, I got to ask you this question. How has that mindset, that thinking, shaped you as owner for the Houston Rockets?
You know, that's a great question, Stephen A. You know, Daryl Morey says to me all the time, and I have a great basketball ops team, and this, you know, more than ever, you know what you know and you know what you don't know, which is something I talk about in the book. And I'm totally dependent on these guys, and they're so smart and they're so great with their analytics. But Daryl still says to me all the time, you know, Tillman, I never thought about looking at it that way. That is really a good observation. And so it's still using great logic on making good decisions. And when we were doing the Westbrook trade, you know, I threw some curves at my guys that they hadn't thought of before. And so you can use the same business principles and everything. And I've always said, if you can if you're a good business person, you can run anything. I don't care if it's a basketball team or an aquarium or a restaurant or a casino like I do, or an amusement park. And it's you use the same good principles and logic, and you can use it all across your life in every way.
As an owner of a professional sports team, what is the one thing you have learned you absolutely cannot have if you expect to succeed as an organization?
Well, you first off, you got to know what you know and what you don't know, and you better depend on your people every day. And sports is religion, and you got to make really, really smart decisions. And you got to decide that you want to be a winner, or you just want to be average, or you want to be a loser. And I treat my basketball team just like I do in everything that I do, and I don't want to ever rebuild. Right now, I think the Rockets are tied for the second most consecutive playoff appearances behind San Antonio. Us and Golden State was 7. And I want to be in the playoffs every year. I don't know that I could take come April and not be in the playoffs. And so you got to keep a winning culture. And I think my guys, Tad Brown running my business side and Daryl running the basketball side, they know that I expect to win every year. And they know that I don't want to rebuild. And so when this group of guys' contracts run out, that we're going to get out there in the free agent market and do whatever we have to do. But I hope I can say this in a few years, but the Houston Rockets aren't ever going to be a rebuilding team. We're going to do whatever it takes to be competitive, just like we have to be in business every single year. We don't get to in business say, you know what, let's rebuild for a couple of years, because if we rebuild, we'll be going busted, Stephen A.
Wow. Tillman Fertitta, owner for the Houston Rockets, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio and ESPN News. His new book, Shut Up and Listen, Hard Business Truths That Will Help You Succeed. It was released yesterday, September 17th. You can get it in the stores right now. I know I'm getting it. You can get it online as well. I know I'm going to get it. I have a copy, but I'm getting several more to give to some people, Tillman, just to let you know. It's interesting that you bring this up, because I think this is a question I would ask any owner at this particular moment in time. Covering the NBA for the last quarter century, basically, the way that I have, I've encountered owners whose definition of winning, obviously, are championships. But there have been owners, and are owners, Tillman, where if you're simply competitive every year and you're in the postseason and you have a chance, that's their definition of success. A, what is your definition of success? And B, do you have a problem with people who have that latter approach towards success in the world of professional sports?
That's really interesting. I hope those other 29 owners in the NBA just want to get to the playoffs, because I'm going to be shooting for the championship. So I would love for them to be like that. But, you've heard me say this before. You can't build a team that you could say automatically we're going to win a championship. As great as Golden State was the last 5 years, they still won 3 championships and lost 2. And so all you can do is build yourself a team that's one of the top 4 or 5 teams in the whole NBA every year, and then you hope for a little luck that your guys don't get injured, their guys do. You're in the right playoff seed to get that 7th game at home. It takes a little luck, so just try to be one of the top teams every year, because that's our goal at the Houston Rockets.
Tillman Fertitta, owner for the Rockets, right here with Stephen A. on ESPN Radio, ESPN News, the Stephen A. Smith Show right here on ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Tillman, how are you feeling about your Rockets now that they have Russell Westbrook? This is a team that was in Game 7 of the conference finals a couple of years ago. Chris Paul goes down in Game 5. Ultimately, Golden State captures Game 6 and 7. And then you have last year, obviously, Kevin Durant goes down. You guys are in position to win the series, but you still ended up losing in 6. What is Russell Westbrook going to give you in concert with James Harden that you didn't get over the last couple of years?
Well, you know how unhappy I was, number one. And this is what you have in James Harden is truly one of the greatest shooters of all time, a guy that can put points on the board. What you have in Russell Westbrook is, and this is a fact, one of the greatest, if not the greatest, transitional player of all time in the NBA. my guys showed me the statistics on and the analytics on Westbrook and what he's able to do in transition. And I think it's going to totally change our team and the way that James now has a guy to transition back the other way. I think you're going to see what we're able to score points-wise if we continue just to take good shots and play the way that we have. We've got a great new defensive coach in Elston Turner who is putting in a lot of new schemes. And it's an exciting year for the Houston Rockets, but it's going to be an exciting season with the new Clippers and the new Lakers and the new Utah Jazz and the good Denver team and, of course, always Golden State, that I am so looking forward to the competitiveness. Even the New Orleans Pelicans coming in is going to be an exciting game.
I got to tell you something. Elston Turner's a damn good coach. He's been around for a long time, been an assistant for many, many years under Rick Adelman all of those years, Portland, Sacramento, stuff like that. The man knows what he's doing, so that's a really good pickup on you guys' part. But I'll ask you this question about James Harden. James Harden's absolutely phenomenal. He was my league MVP. It wasn't the Greek Freak. He was my league MVP. He was sensational last season. But you do have people that look and say that's regular season. Postseason, he tails off a little bit, holding the ball, ISO ball. That's not going to work in the postseason. That's not going to deliver a championship. They look at Russell Westbrook, in my opinion, the most athletic point guard in the history of the NBA, but somebody who has shot less than 30% from three-point range at least the last 2 or 3 seasons. Any concern about those two elements at all derailing your championship aspirations?
Well, it is what it is, but I can tell you this, okay? And we looked at what you say about James and what you just said about Russell, but I'm convinced of this, okay? These two guys are both 30 years old. They're both under contract for the next 4 years, and if they're going to win a championship, it's going to be in the next 4 years. And talking to these guys, they're going to make the adjustments, whatever they have to do. I think that you're going to see Russell Westbrook do what he does best, and I think you're going to see James Harden do what he does best, and they're both going to correct and make their game better at what they do well and not do what they don't do as well. And that's what we're counting on. That's what they're counting on, and I think that's what the Houston Rockets are going to do this year.
Is it safe to say that you expect the relationship between James Harden and Russell Westbrook to be significantly better than the relationship on the court or otherwise with James Harden and CP3?
CP3 was a great player. We would have never won 65 and 53 games. He's one of the finest guys that I'll ever met. He's a great leader for the NBA. But he's 34, James is 30. And 4 years in the NBA is a huge difference in basketball years. It's not like it is in the business world. Westbrook and James came in together. They grew up in L.A. together. They known each other for many, many years. Was there good chemistry for James and Chris? Absolutely, there was great chemistry because we wouldn't have won all those games. But I think the chemistry is even going to be better for Russell and James, and I think people are going to see that this year.
Tillman Fertitta, author, Shut Up and Listen, Hard Business Truths That Will Help You Succeed, released yesterday. You can go get it now. The owner for the Houston Rockets. Honor and privilege to talk to you as always, buddy. Looking forward to seeing you for this upcoming NBA season, my man. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stephen A. See you guys soon. Thank you, sir.
All right, buddy. The one and only Tillman Fertitta, owner for the Houston Rockets, right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News, 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Back with more to close out the show in a minute. Don't touch that dial. This is the Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio, ESPN News.
Need game tickets?
How come nobody's calling Colin Kaepernick? You trying to tell me the Jets don't need Colin Kaepernick? Some dude named Luke Falk is starting for the New York Jets Sunday. Didn't have a bad game last night, so I'm not about to cast any aspersions on them, but are you kidding me? Colin Kaepernick can't get a call? Not a call? Mike Tomlin adroitly avoided the issue of Colin Kaepernick when asked by the media because he said, I'm not talking about anybody that's not on this roster. Steelers are not interested in Colin Kaepernick from what I've been told. New Orleans Saints, with Drew Brees out for the next several weeks due to his thumb injury, haven't even returned calls to Colin Kaepernick's agent. The New York Jets, we don't know where their interest lies. At some point in time, regardless of what we want to say, how Colin Kaepernick could have elected to handle things in the aftermath of kneeling, two things are undeniable. A, he broke no laws legally. And B, he violated no bylaws by the National Football League. We could add C, that the president himself said he wouldn't mind seeing Colin Kaepernick play. So there's no longer that to be concerned about with the owners. So what's the problem? Ladies and gentlemen, I'm not saying that Colin Kaepernick should be granted a roster spot and automatically a starting or a backup quarterback. That's not what I'm claiming here. What I'm claiming, ladies and gentlemen, he don't deserve a tryout. I spoke again to his lady, Nessa Diab. Say what you will about her. Very beautiful lady, inside and out, it seems. Very, very nice to me. Class personified. She says he's waking up 5 a.m. every day, 5 days a week. Training for hours upon hours every day, and he's been doing that for the last 2 years. So if he gets the call, he's immediately ready. That's what she says. Took a knee, addressing racial oppression, racial inequality, brutality on the part of police officers. He did all of that.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line.
Of today's show, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast. Brought to you by the Capital One Quicksilver Card, earning unlimited 1.5% cash back on every purchase, everywhere. Hey, what's in your wallet? A rarity occurred today. I don't think I took one phone call. I've been jam-packed all show long. I don't think I took a call. So tomorrow, I'm going to make sure I dedicate most of my show to calls. I'm going to make sure of that, okay? So I'll make sure to do that, because to make up for times I love talking to my listeners. I usually don't do that, but today was jam-packed. Ryan Clark for Tita with all the things that I had to say, so I apologize. That will not happen again. I'll make sure tomorrow I open those lines and I'll get a lot of callers in. I'll make sure I do that. But I'm about to get on out of here for the day. I will be back with y'all in 20.